Hello, everyone, or just about. Now, hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us and see us. We'll be starting in just a second. Big day. It's Surface Day. Lots of things are announced. Though we're only really going to talk about three of them because not all of them were very exciting. But yes, give us
Sending
two.
out the tweet.
Cool. Give us 1 second and we will get started. I'm ready to go when you are.
2 more seconds. Okay, let me get the notes up.
You have notes?
I am. Stop. I am now recording.
I am now recording as well.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast Special Edition. Ooh, let me do that again. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast Special Edition, episode 242 for September 22nd, 2021. Hey everyone, Deanna Rubino joined here with Zach Bowden for another exciting special Windows Central podcast. As we promised, September 22nd, we are covering the Microsoft event just as it happened. It was about an hour ago after it wrapped up, and we have all the news. We're going to, let's see, the structure of this podcast is pretty simple. We'll go over all the new things, including Surface Duo 2, Surface Laptop, Surface Pro 8, Surface Go 3, Pro X, and some minor things there. As we do that, I'll be sharing my thoughts and impressions, as I did get to spend a very brief time with these devices, but I got to play with them. I got to talk to the people who made them. And so we'll be talking about a lot of the things that weren't in the press release, little tidbits that are kind of interesting. In fact, I should have an article going up on Windows Central pretty soon that will summarize a lot of this stuff. So we'll go through that. And then, of course, at the end, we'll quickly take your questions. You know, because I didn't get to spend as much time as I wanted, it was, with the COVID stuff in New York City, and there was just a very hard time limit with what we could do. So I couldn't ask everything, but that's okay. We'll try to answer your questions of things we missed. And of course, what we don't answer, we will do in the follow-up reviews, which no ETA on those, but historically speaking, Microsoft likes to get those things out the same day these things become available, which at least if you're in the United States, and I believe Canada should be October 5th for most of this stuff, although Duo is, what's the date on that one?
October 21st, yes.
October 21st. And then, well, if you're elsewhere in the world, some of this stuff is
very far away
later. But we'll talk about that as well. So, Zach, how are you doing on this fine Wednesday?
Yeah, it is Wednesday. I'm feeling pretty good. Very excited about all the new announcements. It is a shame that some of it won't be available to me for several months. But the big one that I also looking forward to is, luckily. So we're very excited about that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm exhausted myself. I flew to and from New York City yesterday.
Yeah.
I think I spent about 5 hours on the ground. So I basically spent more time getting to the airport, flying, and going back. But it was probably worth it. Actually, it was worth it. So Microsoft did a very good job. They did something different for us this year because of the pandemic and travel and all that. So they actually gave media, I would say, much more access to what was being announced. We did wonder if there would be one more thing that they didn't tell us,
Yeah.
but that turned out not to be true. So kudos to Microsoft for giving us all this stuff. So basically, we know as much as we usually do at this point, and all went live at the same time on Windows Central, including pricing and the SKUs. And we have a lot of details. So make sure you go to Windows Central for that. Let's get through the news, though. First of all, we'll start with I think the most interesting device, which is Surface Duo 2.
Yeah.
And I only say that, because Laptop Studio is also up there. Laptop Studio, I think, is an easy sell. It's a pretty awesome device. Duo 2, though, has an uphill battle and a lot to prove.
I agree.
And so the question is, does Duo 2 do that? And let's also just give ourselves some credit here. Zach did nail these predictions.
Yeah.
We've been saying for months, we've been telling you 5G, larger displays. We started telling you within the last few weeks, they curve inwards. Hopefully you heard that. We also started mentioning about notifications and secret patent. All that stuff came to be true, as well as for Laptop Studio, although there's a little nuance there. Zach, walk us through the news of Duo 2. and then I'll tell you about what I thought about it, and we'll talk about some aspects of it.
Sure. So the Duo 2, in short, is a major upgrade over the first Surface Duo in almost every regard. It has a better processor in it, Snapdragon 888. It has 5G instead of 4G. Finally has NFC for mobile wireless payments and stuff. Has bigger displays, 5.8 inches, which is up from 5.6, which now equates to around 8.3 inches of screen real estate, which funnily enough matches the new iPad mini, except of course the Duo can fold. Those displays, as we mentioned, slightly curved down the center, which allows the screens to be slightly exposed when the device is closed. And what Microsoft has done with this is added something called a Glancebar, which sort of appears down the spine and just shows you notifications as they come in and stuff. Pretty cool. The batteries are quite a bit bigger. I believe they're 4,449 milliamp hours, which is 900 milliamp hour increase over the Duo 1. So battery life should be pretty good as well. The displays are now 90 Hz and much more responsive. The Duo 1 is sort of infamous for having a terrible touch digitizer. That's been fixed on the Duo 2. The Duo 2 itself is also slightly thicker, which Microsoft says actually helps with the device being more robust. The Duo 1 was kind of, I think it's fair to say, very fragile in how it felt, how it looks. If you look at it like mine, for example, as I look at it right now, it's slightly, one of the sides is slightly bent, and that's just because it's such a thin device. Over time that will happen, especially since the device is surrounded in plastic. Duo 2, now that it's slightly thicker, it's much stronger, and that should also help because the camera system has been updated on this device as well. We will also write about the camera bump, by the way. It is here, and it's not as big as it looks in the photos. Dan did try it out yesterday. He'll talk more about that in a minute. But the device, when you sort of fold it back on itself, does have that bump in the way. But because the device is more robust, there's much less concern with it sort of bending if you put pressure on the lower half of the display. So all good news, really. The pricing has increased by $100 over the original Duo's price. So it's now $14.99 starting. And there's also a new 512 gig model at $17.99. So very expensive for the 512 gig. I think even though it is more expensive, the $14.99 price tag for this device, I think, is reasonable considering all of the improvements and upgrades they've actually added to this device. They've added 3 new lenses, all of which are actually pretty good now. The displays are bigger, they're 90 Hertz, the battery is much bigger, all that other stuff. I think it's worth it. And of course, it's also now available in black. And although it does require an additional sort of case accessory, the Surface Slim Pen can finally be charged on the front of the Duo if you have the Surface sort of Slim Pen charging case, I guess, for the Duo 2. Dan, you got to try it out yesterday. What are your impressions on the hardware?
Yeah, so this is a great word out there. It's ineffable. It means it's hard to describe and actually put into words. So as someone who used Duo 1 for a very long time, up through June, and then I started switching out because I have some reviews and other Android phones I was using, holding version 2, it feels substantially different. And we should point out this device is basically redesigned from the ground up.
Yeah.
The chassis is technically different. The hinge has been reworked. The displays are updated. They're larger, thinner bezels. Uses Gorilla Invicta glass, the strongest out there. They curve inwards, right? You already went through all this stuff. Holding it, it just feels more substantial. And you and I have gone back and forth on this a lot with Duo 1, where the bumper, right, that comes in the box, where I felt I needed to put the bumper on to safely use the device, to give confidence when I was opening it and carrying it around. And that's because Duo 1 was almost too thin. And I know that's a weird thing to say, and we've said this before, where unless you've handled Surface Duo, you can't appreciate just the engineering that they did on it. It is stupid thin. And it was almost too thin and too delicate. This gets away from that. It's slightly thicker. So instead of 4.8 millimeters opened, it's now 5.5 millimeters. That doesn't sound like much, but when you combine that with the change of some of the materials and some of the glass, and then you throw on that new clip-on cover, which is like a hard plastic cover, even without it, I didn't feel I needed to put something on it for the first time. And that was a great change. And so it just feels better. But also, like, when you open it, they rework the hinges a little bit stiffer. Which normally sounds worse, but just the way it opens, it feels sturdier.
Yeah.
And so that's my, just the first impressions on holding it, using it. And now I know a lot of people have the question, like, oh, but the camera bump. what's it like with one-handed? And it's so weird when people say this because first of all, we know with the bumper, it already does that anyway in Duo 1. Two, I don't think the most important innovation of Surface Duo was being able to use it one-handed. I think the most important innovation, but people have told me that. I'm like, no, the most important innovation is it's dual screen.
Right, yeah.
That's really the innovation. I get it, but TLDR, it's fine. When you flip that screen around and use it one-handed, you don't really notice it. It feels totally fine one-handed. The lenses of the camera don't actually make contact either with the back of the device. We should mention that that camera module is angled, and so it all lines up nicely. And in fact, we mentioned this with Surface Laptop, like when you close Surface Laptop, it has a nice kind of thud to it, and how that sound is so important. It's the same here. When you reverse close it and it does that clap, well, you can't hear my clap because I'm using G-Force, but it makes like a clap noise. And it just sounds good. It sounds like it's supposed to do that. I talked to the engineers about this. I was like, so sturdiness. They're like, we spent a lot of time on the chassis. It's very sturdy. That includes the Type-C port. I asked about that. You know, it cracked. And you're like, no, we're more confident this time. It's been reworked. We'll have to wait and see, of course. But obviously, they were aware of that. They had plenty of returns. So I'm sure they did focus on it. They focused on the usability one-handed. To me, it didn't feel... It felt fine. Now, and it's funny, it gets even thicker if you slap on that case and the pen, and then you use it one-handed. It's even thicker, but it was still like fine. I don't know. It's hard to explain. We'll see more in the review.
The one thing I have just realized as you were talking there is because the two sides never meet now in single screen mode, Microsoft can do actual cases. You know, the Duo 1 had this issue where if you put an actual case on the front and back, you couldn't fold it all the way around and you could break the hinge. Now that those two sides never actually meet in single screen mode, they can actually put proper cases on the device, which is kind of what you're seeing with this sort of charging case, as we keep describing it, which we'll talk about in a second. But it covers the entire front of the Duo. And so you can still fold it all the way back, and it doesn't hinder the usability of single screen mode now because those two sides never meet. That's the thing that I never actually thought about till right now.
Yeah, you're right. No, it's like, and this is like a shell that clips on. We should point out the bumpers are still available. Right. I don't think they include a bumper in the box this time, though. Don't. But and they have like a few new colors as well. So if you like the bumper, you can go bumper. You can throw a D brand skin on there. You're totally good. But if you want to throw the cover on there and click that on, which will also hide the fingerprint, especially from the front. You know, this is like a hard plastic, and it has a texture to it. It feels really, really good. The magnet. So the other cool thing is now the pen sticks to the front cover. And this is nothing like what we were doing with Duo 1, where people are like, oh, it sticks. Because it wasn't meant to.
Right.
What we're sticking to were the other internal magnets. These are purposeful, and purposeful delivers. These magnets, so the question I immediately had was, are they strong magnets, right? This is like sticking to your fridge.
Yeah.
When that pen clicks on there, it's on there. Like you have to kind of pry it off. And that's what we want, because you want to be able to put this in your pocket and have that pen stay on. We'll have to see with jeans and tight pockets, but I'm pretty confident this thing is going to stay on. Now with that cover, same thing, it sticks on. The difference is that cover also now charges the pen, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, so to clarify there, you can stick the pen on the device without the case, and it will stick and it will stay there, but it will not charge unless you have this additional case to put on it first. The case is what enables the wireless charging between the Duo and the pen, which is an interesting choice. I do wonder how that works, because I guess they have the wireless coils in there for it. It's just not enabled unless they use the case.
Over the weekend, through the FCC, we saw what was Duo 2 go through, and there was mention of wireless power charging. And I put a paragraph in there. I'm like, you may want to think this is Qi wireless, but we've heard there is no Qi wireless here. What this probably is for is inductive charging of the pen. And
there it is.
Called it. That's exactly what it's for. Someone's mentioning no NFC. They're not mentioning NFCs. We mentioned in all the articles. It has NFC.
Yes. That was, funny enough, that was the first thing I was ever told about Duo 2. Back in, I think it must have been mid 2020. My sources said to me, Duo 2 has NFC. That's the first thing I asked about. So they've had it in the plan.
Yep. So NFC. Let's talk about the camera itself. You got 3 cameras. Do you have the specs in front of you
I
for
do
that?
not. I remember the megapixels though. So the wide camera is 12 megapixels, the ultra wide is 16 megapixels, and the telephoto lens is 12 megapixels. There's also a selfie camera on the inside above the right display, which has also been slightly upgraded. It's now a 12 megapixel sensor as well. It's also centered. You're on the Duo 1, of course, it's sort of slightly to the right because of the earpiece is in the way. On the Duo 2, it's now centered. And we also didn't mention, as since we're there, real quick, the speakers are now stereo rather than mono on the left side. They're now on both sides of the device.
So, in clarification on it, this is interestingly and weird. One speaker on the right side, no, sorry, the speaker on the left side is at the top. The speaker on the right side is at the bottom.
Oh, weird. Why is that? Did they say why?
Yeah, because you can use it in different postures, and it's going to give you, and also because there's the earpiece
Oh, yeah,
speaker.
good point. Yeah.
So they're not using the same one, which tells me they probably could have, because devices have done that. But what this tells me, and I didn't get to sample this, is that they try to put in good speakers, good dedicated speakers there.
Right.
We'll have to wait and see how they are, though. But yeah, they're kind of opposite oriented. That's gonna be. I'm curious about how that all works out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff with the audio. The camera, I should mention, the rear-facing wide, basically the default, is an f1.7 aperture, which is very good, actually. That's pretty low for an aperture, which means, and Zach, maybe you want to talk about this for a sec. You heard that there's, I believe, a Japanese company that handles sort of the algorithmic computational photography stuff for them.
Yes, there is. I cannot remember the name of them though. So Microsoft, I don't know if Microsoft really, they didn't tell us this in the briefing. This is info I've heard from my sources, but Microsoft contracted a third-party computational photography company, which has worked with a bunch of big name brands. I can't remember the names now. To sort of handle the computational side of taking photos, because obviously these days you don't just snap a photo and be done with it. Once you take that photo, the device does on-device processing of that photo to sort of sharpen it up, adjust the colors, and make it look nice. That's what Google Pixel does. It's what the iPhone does these days, and the Duo 2 now does this as well. They've actually rebuilt the camera from the ground up, which I'm sure Dan will talk about in a second. And this, of course, has that new computational photography built into it. And that should improve things like low light photography, which is one area the Duo really needed improvement in, because in the daytime the Duo 1 was fine, it was just slow, but at nighttime was really where it fell apart. And hopefully the Duo 2 doesn't have that issue. Microsoft does says it has dedicated night light photography modes now, which is great to hear. That's kind of what you expect on a flagship phone these days, and the Duo delivers in that department now.
Yeah, and what was interesting was yesterday when I was talking to them and they're going through, they are not shy about the camera. And they spent a lot of time on it during the announcement. And the reason I mention that is because they're not trying to hide it. They're very proud of it. They're very like, oh, this is going to be a very good camera. I got to do sample photos and, do some quick things. Granted, it was in one room, right? So I couldn't take it outdoors and try it out. But they had sample photos on the device that they had done in New York City that day and stuff when showing me. And they show off a bunch of sample photos in the announcement, including low light stuff. They seem to be very confident. This is a real serious camera. My impressions off of, the brief time I spent with it, this is mid-upper tier, definitely. Maybe last year's Galaxy level. I still don't think it's going to be like a Samsung Galaxy S21 or the iPhone 13. I don't think it's there. But these look to be very good cameras. And what's neat too, they reworked the camera app. So it's their own proprietary camera app now that leverages Duo. So first of all, it spans both screens. Now on the right side is your live camera view, which is good because that's right behind the camera basically. And then on the left side is a camera roll. So as you're taking photos, boom, they just instantly show up. And they show up very quickly too, right? You're getting a lot of residual benefits from the Snapdragon 888 that's on this thing. So they show up, but then if you click the photo on the left, you can go into an editor mode. It then shoots that image to the right side, and you have a full editor palette on the left, including sliders and pre-crops, and you can do inking, and it's just a bunch of stuff in there that really says this is purposeful. You're supposed to use this camera on this device for a lot of things, and then immediately act upon it with your edits and inking and all this kind of stuff. Again, it feels like, oh, this is the vision now coming together. Yeah, I think the camera is going to be great. There's even a time of flight sensor, which is used for depth of field and speed of accuracy. That's an advanced feature that you typically only see in the high-end premium phones. Now, I know it's $1,500. You expect all that, but don't forget, you're also paying for the 90 Hz dual displays and all the other technology in this device. I think the camera is going to be really good on this. And by the way, holding it and shooting is fine. Like, again, it's not that radically different than holding a tablet phone in front of your face and taking a photo either. In fact, you have a little bit more grip with the two screens on there. So I think it's going to be actually a pretty good shooter.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Real quick, I did find the name of the computational company I was talking about. They're called Morpho, Morpho. And they say they specialize in imaging technology R&D. I can't find a list of companies they've worked with, but I remember someone telling me that they've worked with quite a few of the big ones. So I guess that's good. Of course, real world testing, we'll see how it really is. I'm excited for the cameras. Like I said, I've never been a huge camera person in regards to cameras on my phone, but the Duo made me realize that, actually, I do kind of want to take photos more than I thought I did, especially at nighttime, which is kind of where the Duo really fell down, and you might as well not have had one at that point. So yeah, hopefully the Duo 2 improves that. Did you talk a little bit about the some of the software improvements yet?
Tons of them. So this is a lot of the little stuff that wasn't mentioned in the press release. So the Microsoft launcher has been updated. I actually don't know all that much about the launcher. I didn't get to go into the settings. I could have, but to be honest, I was on very strict time constraint here.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm trying to answer the question for Jez. Can you pick an accent color? I don't know. That might be there. But things I did see, the notification panel when it comes down, one looks like Android 12. And they did that on purpose. They said that you're basically going and getting some Android 12 design cues in this. It's also wider now. One of the complaints of Surface Duo 1 was the notification panel, as you pull it down, was pretty narrow compared to the rest of the display. It's now wider. It's not 100%, of course, but it's probably like 80% of the single display, and it looks much better. They put dedicated sliders for brightness and volume. Which is cool. The reason they did that, so when you put it into the tent mode, say you're watching a video, you can still then access your volume or brightness of the display simply by swiping down, because those volume buttons, the physical ones, are now blocked in tent mode, right? You can't access them. So they thought of a lot of little things there. Also, the I forgot what you call it, the feed that's on the left side, that's part of Launcher, has been updated and looks much more like the Windows 11 widgets, including the weather and news and all this kind of stuff. And it just looks cleaner and a little bit nicer. I should also mention, this is just for the nerds. Microsoft, we didn't even talk about this on the podcast. We keep forgetting, rebranded Microsoft News, the news app, as Start. And then they push it out for Android and iOS. And it's basically the same thing that's in widgets at this time. But what we Duo owners noticed was that it had no dual screen support. And we're like, what the heck? And Zach had heard that, no, it's supposed to be there. I can tell you it's there now. I don't know when that update's coming out. I can just tell you I used Start and it had dual screen support. It was pretty awesome. So that's coming. Trying to think what else there was. I don't know. The black colorway looked really good. I'm torn between the black or white ones. I thought they both looked really good. There's a new digitizer this time. And a different processor used. I believe it's the same processor used for the new Surface Pen. In other words, touch support and feel should be much better on this version. It seemed okay to me too, but again, I only had brief time. I love the 90 Hz display refresh. Look, everything just looked very fluid, including screen rotation was much quicker as well.
The other thing I've noticed in the photos and stuff that you've taken is that the fit and finish, the overall fit and finish looks to be much improved. Like, for example, if you look at the Duo 1, this won't come across very well on the camera, but the outside glass just looks like it's stuck on. You know, we sort of commented on this before. On the Duo 2, they've actually curved the glass into the edges of the device, which is what most smartphones do. This isn't like a standout feature, but the Duo now finally does that, and it really sort of, I guess, adds to the structural stability of the device. Because again, remember, Duo 1 is kind of, I wouldn't call it a flimsy device, but it's a very sort of fragile, as you described it, and I sort of agree with that.
It's fragile.
The Duo 2 feels like much more of a tank by the looks of things.
It does. It really feels, it feels just, you feel more confident using it. Like you're not going to break it. It feels so cool. Like with the pen on there now sticking, it really does feel like this proper digital journaling app, which has always been the concept behind it. And it's safe to say Surface Duo 1 was basically a prototype that ended up getting kind of mass produced. And that's totally fine. I mean, Zach's written about the history of the device. And I think that's what it was. They wanted to kind of get it out there and get the ball rolling. But Duo 2 definitely feels like them doubling down on it and really fixing all that stuff. And like I said, this device is going to be the most interesting in the sense that it has the most to prove. It has a huge uphill battle to win people over. I'm curious just as much as anyone, not just about my own review once I get it, other people's takes on it. I can tell you, in chatting with some media people yesterday, Ari was very interested in it and very positive. Even Michael Fisher, Mr. Mobile, who's been pretty hard on the Duo, inappropriately, not much different than Zach. He thinks it looks really good too. So we'll wait for the reviews, but I'm excited. Downside, pricing is still crazy expensive.
Yeah.
And that's not going to change, unfortunately.
Well, it might next year, but we'll talk more about that another day.
Exactly. Did we talk about the Glancebar at all?
I briefly mentioned it. So as I mentioned, since the displays are now slightly curved down the middle, they're slightly exposed down the spine. And Microsoft has built a feature called Glancebar, which shows heads-up sort of notifications that come in, as well as, which I think is really cool, the battery charging indicator status. So when you plug the device in, the spine becomes like a bar to see how much full the battery is, which I think is really cool. There's one for phone calls as well. So when you have a phone call coming in, there's like a pulsing bar that sort of dances to the music or to your ringtone. And there's one more, but I cannot remember what it is. Is there one more?
It's volume.
That's right, volume. Yep.
Yeah, so volume. So if you're playing music on your device and you have it closed, you can, when you hit the volume keys, basically a white bar will appear and go up or down based on your volume settings, which is neat. Same thing with the text message comes in. A text message, it does a different blue pulse than the phone call one. To give you a visual indicator that a message has come in. And then it naturally, after it's done doing that, it naturally fades to a notification bar, which gives you a little like SMS, missed call with a number badge on it. And that then goes away, it fades out. You can recall it anytime you hit the power button when it's closed, that bar will appear.
Yeah.
So you can basically, with the device closed, you could just click the power button and you'll see if you've missed anything. And you'll also see the time. It is super clever. And it's not as like ideal as, like what the Z Flip 3 has done with a full display. Even that's not as good as the Motorola one, right? But this is a very good solution for the basics. But more than that, it looks super rad. Yeah. Like, it just looks so cool in person when you see it. You're just like, oh, my God. I mean, just laying on your desk and that little bar lighting up like that, it's just clever. It's neat. Yeah. I'm very excited about it.
So, unfortunately, I don't think you can have it be always on. I think it only comes on when you tap the power button. Or I think it has raise to wake now, right? So it should come on when you pick the device up. But yeah, I
don't know about that, but like I said, it's when you hit the power button.
Yeah.
Someone's asking, they didn't combine the power button and fingerprint reader. I don't think so. Honestly.
No, they did. They've done that. That's
okay.
Yeah. So the thing.
So it was so fast. I just picked it up and started using it.
Yeah. No, the fingerprint reader is now embedded in the power button, so that just looks cleaner on the side. The small design change as well. The USB-C port is now centered on the right side.
Censored.
Yeah.
And SIM is on the bottom.
Yes.
Centered on the bottom too. So on the other side. Yeah, it's I'm very excited about this. I think they did a real knockout job. Will it appease everyone? I don't know. Android 11 looks a lot better. I did ask about Android 12, and same thing. They basically said what we've been hearing, which is we believe we can get that update out much faster than the getting to Android 11 was because of the better support there. And, they're still talking up the dual screen abilities and the new versions of Android. We should also mention they really plugged gaming on this. They really do see this as a gaming device now. They boasted about both in person at this event as well as during the announcement, Xbox Game Pass. Gameloft has 3 custom games basically for it. One was Asphalt 9. The other one was Modern Combat 5, I believe it is. I'm not familiar with these games. And the other one's like Dungeon Hunter or something. And these games are optimized so you get the full game on like the top thing. On the bottom, for like Dungeon Hunter, I think that's the name of it. that one, you have like a map screen. It's a secondary screen, so you can kind of see like treasure and stuff, but it also has the on-screen controls. And so they really like leverage the dual screen stuff. On top of that, you have Game Pass. They have more than 50 games now with touch controls that do the dual screen thing, including like Sea of Thieves. They're showing that off playing on there with the dual screen stuff. And they said a lot more games are coming. So they definitely see this as, you know, good for gaming. I'll have to wait and see how it feels in hand and all that compared to Duo 1. I think, again, Duo 1 felt almost too thin to hold sometimes in this position for very long periods, whereas I feel like Duo 2 is going to feel just a little bit more substantial in the hand and it's going to feel better. But we'll have to wait and see. But they were definitely plugging this for gaming. You know, that's the important thing here. It's gaming, inking, and camera use. Is just really now the focal points of this device. I think that's super interesting because all three of those were not the focus point, or at least not the strengths of Duo 1. You know, yeah, you could do inking on Duo 1, but it was kind of like there as an afterthought, right?
Yeah.
This feels a lot more focused and purposeful in design.
Yeah. So the one thing we still don't really know about, because we've not been able to use it, is whether or not the software is still buggy. We're hoping Android 11 sort of improves upon the bugginess of the sort of Surface Duo OS significantly. But until we have it in our hands, we can't really comment on that. But Microsoft, I'm pretty sure, are aware of our complaints and do know that their software was, you know, terrible. So
Sure.
hopefully that has improved. I would be shocked if it's not improved over the Duo 1. Whether or not it's up to a standard which I find acceptable is another story nonetheless. But we will obviously talk more about that once we have the device in hand and have done the review.
Everybody keeps asking about the USB port. We already talked about it, so I don't know if you guys are late to the podcast or what. We talked about it. All I can tell you, I asked them specifically. They're very aware, right? They had a ton of returns. So the idea that they said they fixed it. The chassis is completely different. It's a complete redesign. It's sturdier than before.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about the entire chassis, not just the displays. The displays are also Invictus glass. The hinges are more sturdy too. Everything about it. Now, if you stick in a Type-C thing and then you force it down 90 degrees and try to break it, I'm sure you could. I could do that to any phone, right? So it's not bulletproof. They did say they do believe it's going to be stronger. That's all I can tell you. I mean, I don't know. I don't have the review unit, and time will tell. But they're very aware of that problem, and they think they solved it. So, plus it's slightly thicker now, so it should have more room around it.
Yeah.
But,
so real quick before we move on, just to sort of round things up for the Duo 2, pricing, as we mentioned, starts at $14.99 for 128. 256 gig costs $15.99, and 512 gig costs $17.99, which is pretty expensive. It begins rolling. You can pre-order it now, and it's expected to start shipping October 21st in the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, France, Germany, and Japan. So as we sort of mentioned before, that's the sort of initial expansion of the markets for Duo 1. I'm sure they expect to expand even more markets in next year, but as of right now, it's just those 6 markets, which is, I think, perfectly fine because the UK is on that list. So,
nice. If you guys have other questions about Duo 2, save them for the end of the podcast.
Yep.
We're going to go right now to Laptop 4. Not Laptop 4. Surface Laptop Studio. Almost confused there. So again, we nailed this pretty well, I thought.
Yeah.
You know, you were saying, is it Surface Book 4? You're hearing maybe Laptop Studio.
Okay, so just full clarification. I knew it was Laptop Studio when I first mentioned it, but I just couldn't be confident in it because I wasn't allowed to be.
Fair enough. So Laptop Studio is the name. Why is it not Studio Laptop? Who knows? This is a very intriguing device. If you guys recall, I reviewed the HP Elite Folio early this year, and I flat out said in the headline, this is what, you know, a convertible PC should be. The design of a pull-it-forward display is just so much better than a 360 hinge. First of all, you don't have to take it off your lap ever. It's just in one position. 2, it goes into more natural positions, including a sort of angled position for watching movies where it hides the keyboard, and then it lays down, but at an angle, just like a drafting board. It was perfect on the Elite Folio. They did it here. I got to spend time with their engineers talking about how they did it, and it's crazy because HP put like a leather and then eventually a leatherette on the second version around the outside of the device to hide the cables and the way it all works. Microsoft didn't do that. This thing looks like if you took a Surface Pro and stuck it onto a bottom half of a Surface laptop. So it looks
Yeah.
very clean on the outside. But on the inside, and you'll see this in some photos, it's cloth. There's a cloth layer in there. And they basically just either discovered or found a special fabric that doesn't stretch and is very strong, almost probably like a Kevlar kind of thing. But what's cool is the way that this opens and closes and then adjusts to the different postures, that fabric gets sucked into the display. So there's never any slack. And this also holds all the wiring and cables, which also they showed like a version of this with a clear display. And you can see the cables moving on the inside. It's totally crazy. It is completely over-engineered, just what we expect from Microsoft. Zach, walk us through the actual specs of this device and what people are getting.
Sure. So you get an Intel Core i5 or i7 11th gen chip. This is a quad-core chip, but it's a slightly more, I don't know how you would say it. The wattage on this chip is higher, so it should be a little bit more powerful than the sort of 11th gen chips you find in the Laptop 4 and the Surface Pro 8. It's not 6 or 8 core, which is kind of what I was hoping to see, but in a 14-inch device, I think it makes sense because obviously you've got to consider thermals and stuff. In addition to that, 8 gigs or 16 gigs of RAM. There's no 4 gig model, though there is models without the dedicated GPU, of which is now the NVIDIA RTX 3050 Ti. No 3060, unfortunately, but I think the 3050 Ti is perfectly fine for the kind of thing that Microsoft expects customers of this device to need to be able to use it for. The entry-level models for the i5 come with the, so obviously integrated Intel Iris Xe graphics, but then once you step up to the i7, you get the dedicated RTX. If you buy the commercial model, you can actually configure it with an RTX A2000 graphics card as well. Not sure what the difference is between those. I assume one is more for crunching data and the other one isn't.
So that's just a professional thing where certain graphics cards require digitally signed certificates and drivers from professional software, CAD software, engineering software, that then guarantee to work with that card. You can use it on other hardware, but this has to do with a failure and error rate that's important for this really advanced work. So it's for professional use. NVIDIA's been doing this for ages. It's just speaking to a specific market that needs that kind of hardware / drivers that the public and gamers don't need.
Mm-hmm. The display is 14.4 inches with a resolution of 2400 by 1600, which isn't that high. I was expecting much higher than this because obviously the Surface Book in the past has had very high resolutions, the highest on any of their portable PCs. But the Surface Laptop Studio sort of steps it down to a 201 pixel per inch display, which matches the Surface Laptop 4. But isn't the crispest display they've got. I think the Pro 8 now sort of beats the Laptop Studio, which is an interesting choice to me. But I believe you asked them why they did this.
These are just, so these kind of questions fall into like, why didn't they use a 6 or 8 core processor?
Right,
why didn't they put a 3080 in there? It all comes down to they were designing this device for a specific market, a specific user, and they have to balance cost. They want to hit a specific price point, whatever that was, which I assume is the actual pricing. They want to hit a specific price point. They want to hit a specific battery level, battery range for these. They want to deliver what the audience wants, as well as what can be mass produced. And that's what you settle on. I think the screen looked fantastic to me. I think it's really hard to tell the difference with PPI at this, level. But it's about balancing everything, right? So you got to get everything right.
I do want to mention that the bezels on this are very thin and they're uniform. So that one, the top and bottom aren't thicker than the sides. That they're the same size all the way around. Rounded corners, which I love to see, and 120 hertz. This is one of 2 devices being announced today with 120 hertz displays, as we expected. Although it's not dynamic, we thought it would be dynamic. We believe that's coming later, but at launch it's locked at 120 or 60. Either way, Microsoft is touting 19 hours of battery life, up to 19 hours. Of course, real-world usage will probably see that number come down quite significantly, but 19 hours I think is the biggest claim they've made on a Surface device to date, I want to say. The Surface Book, I remember them claiming 15.
And this comes in with the 11th gen stuff,
Yeah.
as well as building this device they worked with Intel on these to really optimize stuff. And you're right about the display. Out of the box, it's 60 hertz. Users can then, and that'll be the 19 hours, right? But then users can then flip it to 120 hertz. Your battery life is going to drop down. Now, from what I understand is, an update's going to come out with Windows 11 / the drivers here, which will enable a dynamic refresh, which is what we were anticipating, so that the display will basically idle at probably 60 hertz, maybe even lower. I'm not really sure. And then it'll ramp up to 120 when you're inking or scrolling, and then go back down again, like Apple's ProMotion. So that's coming a little bit later, but users for now can manually switch between the two.
Speaking of the pen, this device also has a hidden charging cradle for the Surface Slim Pen 2 with magnets. So just like the Duo, except it doesn't require a case to charge. I guess we'll talk a bit more about this in a minute, but the design of the Laptop Studio is interesting because it's stepped or staged, as I think Dan described it, in the sense that there's an actual thicker base that's sort of hidden underneath it, which looks interesting. It won't be to everyone's taste, but that's the book line, this is technically a successor to the book, which we'll also talk about in a second. But that's sort of Surface devices in a nutshell, right? they're like uncharacteristically beautiful in weird ways, and some people don't like it, some people do, but this is certainly one of those laptops where the design is, when you look at its side profile, very interesting to look at. Anyway, but that step design allows the sort of keyboard deck to sort of stick out a little bit, and they've hidden the charging sort of cradle underneath there for the Slim Pen, which is super cool. Anything else worth mentioning? The trackpad is much larger than that on the Surface Book 3, and it's Microsoft's first haptic touchpad, which I know Dan is very excited about.
Yeah, so I thought this was... It was funny because literally a month ago, I wrote an article saying Microsoft needs to take the lead on haptic trackpads. And if you listen to this podcast, you've heard me, go on a lot about haptics. And to a lot of people, I might have sounded crazy, but it's a big deal. And Microsoft thought it was a big deal because this has a haptic trackpad. So the immediate first question I had was, who made it? Was it Sensel or was it Boris, the other company that was doing haptics? It's neither. It turns out Microsoft made their own haptic trackpad, which was really interesting. And they give a lot of interesting explanations of why it's better, including the fact that they said it's just ergonomics, right? You can, on a typical trackpad, the left and right click are near the bottom, right? So you need to kind of move your hand down. This you can right and left click kind of anywhere on it. And so it's just easier for your hands to move around. It felt really good to me. It's very smooth. You really can't tell that it's not really clicking. That's the purpose of haptics. There's also a slider in Windows 11, and this is why I love haptics, is there's a slider that lets you adjust how much it does the haptics. You can almost turn it off so it doesn't even click, or you can ramp it up so it's going to make like a loud, like kind of click noise, and you're going to really feel like a thud when you click on it. Just really, really nice. I'm very excited to see that, the high refresh stuff. I will say, though, the biggest disappointment is, and this applies to the Pro 8 too, they are not using anti-reflective displays. Drives me nuts. They were so close.
Did you ask them about that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course I did. And they kind of shrugged and like, you know what? I actually don't know why we don't. No one knew the answer for it. No one was prepared to fight me on why anti-reflective is better. They started to go down the path that about the color accuracy is better and all this. And I don't think that's really true anymore. I'd love to get Panos or Steve Batchy on record to explain to me, tell me why I'm wrong in wanting anti-reflective or what the trade-off is. I should also point out that this device and the Pro 8 also now have an ambient sensor to detect color. So this is a new feature we see in Windows 11. Basically, the sensor then auto-adjusts the color on your screen based on the lighting above you. So if you're sitting in like fluorescent lighting versus, say, at home incandescent lighting and it's more yellow, the display auto-adjusts the color. If this sounds familiar, Apple devices do this too, but it gives you a more accurate color representation based on the ambient lighting around you. Just a cool little small thing. Should mention Dolby Vision support, Dolby Audio Atmos support as well. So they're really kind of doubling down on the Dolby stuff. Dolby Vision is basically an HDR. it's a color format that's optimized for watching movies, basically, although it helps in other aspects of media too. But it's really when you watch movies that are sort of like HDR optimized, you're going to get a real punchier look to it. So they did a lot of small stuff. It also has quad audio, which is really cool. I didn't get to test the speakers. Again, we'll save this for the review. But quad audio is obviously the way to do it. That's the most audio they've ever done in a device. This is it's a weird looking device too, because at first when you walk up to it, like I said, it looks like a Surface Pro melded with a laptop. But then you see that stepped design at the bottom with the venting and stuff like that. And you're like, wow, this is definitely different.
Yeah.
And it almost looks Mac-ish too at the base. Like the way it kind of curves, it has kind of rounded corners. I feel like this device is a slam dunk. It's just, I think a lot of people are going to really like it. And then the pen, the way it mounts underneath and sticks to it, it's all in one package. No more floppy pen you're going to lose. Just clever, advanced engineering. Really, I feel like this device represents the best of what Microsoft can do when it tries to create the ultimate laptop. We've argued for, Surface Book. I used to say, they should do a Surface Laptop Pro. What you really want is a Surface Laptop Pro, which doesn't exist, but Microsoft should make one. Well, that's what this is. This is a Surface Laptop Pro with the cool screen functionality with it. So I think it looks fantastic.
Yeah. A few people asking how much it weighs. The i7 model weighs 4 pounds, which to compare with the 15-inch Surface Book 3, that was 4.2 pounds, I believe. So they're comparable, right? It's slightly lighter, but I don't think you'll notice it really.
Yeah, it's a metal chassis, right? It's magnesium or whatever. So it's going to be a thicker, not thicker, but it's going to be a dense device. But it felt solid. There's no flex to it and all this kind of stuff. We'll hold this up for the review, though, to see how we go with it. But I think this is, like I said, like a slam dunk. And I love 14.4-inch display or whatever it is.
That's right.
Just an ideal size. It's going to be fun to use. How's it compared to an XPS 15? The XPS 15, I believe, still has a more powerful processor in it. And you can put up to like a Core i9 in that thing. So technically, I think an XPS 15 will be faster. But the thermals on this should be very good too. So it's going to be kind of interesting. The processor is an H35, which basically means it's a 35-watt processor. So this is the fastest CPU they've ever used, and basically any of their laptops before. This is faster than Surface Book. It's much more advanced. Plus, it's 11th gen. It should be a very good processor, and combined with that 3050 Ti, it's a nice high-end middle road. It's not the fastest laptop in the world, but it's at that high end, right? It's in that crucial middle ground. But you're also going to probably get very good battery life on this thing. So, we'll see.
Yeah, so we should probably mention pricing and all of that good stuff. Not cheap, although to be fair, it kind of matches the Surface Book's pricing, so it shouldn't be too surprising. Starting at $15.99 for an Intel Core i5 with 16 gigs of RAM, 128 gig of storage, and Intel Iris Xe. No 8 gig of RAM models this time, so I guess that's an improvement over the Surface Book. The most expensive one is $3,100. And that gets you an i7 with 32 gigs of RAM, 2 terabytes of storage, and of course the NVIDIA RTX 3050 Ti. Availability begins shipping or expected to ship October 5th in the United States and Canada, and will roll out to 47 additional markets in early 2022. No word on what those markets are specifically, but I'm sure Microsoft will provide a list at some point in the future. So unfortunately, I can't buy this one yet, but I'm very excited for it. This will be my new laptop. I sold my Surface Book 3 recently in preparation for this. Now that I'm thinking about it, I probably sold it a bit too early, but since I've got to wait 5 months, but we'll work through it.
This is the chip shortage coming into effect, unfortunately. Yeah. Plus, being a new device, we've said this before, they tend to be, with production, they start small and then ramp up once they know they're confident in their production, that they're not having high failure rates and all that kind of stuff, or returns, right? If they start releasing, you don't want to sell worldwide and having like a major issue, you have to do a lot of returns. You can catch those in the U.S. market early. You can correct them for UK later on and all that kind of stuff. So I think this device is a slam dunk again. So, for the right market, stuff like that. But should be really good. Can't wait to review it.
Are we sort of hitting it before we move on from this? Microsoft did confirm that this is a replacement to the Surface Book, so we are not expecting a Surface Book 4. That form factor seems to have been put to bed. The detachable sort of laptop that they were building is no more. This laptop studio is a replacement to that line. Which I guess some people may be okay with, other people kind of upset. I know there were fans of the Surface Book's design specifically. The Book 3 is still a great device. They still sell it, and they probably will until they're out of stock. So, and they're going to support it, I think, up until 2024 with firmware updates and stuff. So you still got plenty of time to use that device. But yes, this laptop studio was built by the Surface Book team, so that makes sense that this is sort of the successor to that. Will they reuse the Surface Book branding eventually? I'm sure they will. I feel like the Book branding on any product is too valuable to not use anymore. So they might reuse it. Maybe the Surface Neo will be rebranded Surface Book.
There you go. It really makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they may have to give it. They give it a year or two between, right?
Sure. Yeah. Exactly.
Would be. So very good. Let's move on to Surface Pro 8, the sleeper hit, I call it. Surface Pro 8 is really interesting because, again, we've been saying for years, Surface Pro has basically been a perfected design. It just is. It's iconic at this point, and they figured it out.
We may have lost Dan. It appears we may have lost Dan. No! I'm sure he's still chatting away. See if we can get him back. Hello, welcome back.
You can thank Microsoft for Skype crashing.
Oh, did it just crash? Oh, wow, that's insane.
It just disappears.
Oh, well. Well, at least you're back. Should we just start the Pro 8 one again? And we'll cut that bit.
Let's start with Pro 8 again. The Surface Pro 8 is basically a perfect device and has been for a long time. That's not to say there weren't needed changes. Of course they were. We all knew what those are, right? The bezels needed to get thinner. A high refresh display would be cool. But more importantly, Thunderbolt 4. Why can't we just get Thunderbolt on these things, right? Microsoft came in and basically gave us all what we wanted. So let's go through those changes. 11th gen Intel. Sorry, no AMD, but they work closely with Intel on these things, and Intel does some more advanced things that Microsoft wants, and that's what you get. So latest 11th gen Intel stuff. All models, this is interesting, all the models, including the i3, i5, have fans in them now. They actually built a device with the fans in there, but also an optional LTE can go on there. So you can get LTE apparently in all the models, which is going to be really cool. So if you want an LTE now in the i7, because you could only get LTE for the i5 before, because where the fan was is where they would put the LTE. Now they solved that. So now you want LTE in the i3, you can do that. You can get LTE in the i7. It's up to you. So that's a neat little trade-off. But there's a little distinction for you between this and Pro X. I should mention, it is really hard to tell the difference between this device and Pro X when you just glance at them. If they're side by side, you'd be like, they're the same. Oh. The only way you can really tell is when you look at the side profile and you see the venting grill for the Intel version. Obviously, the Intel version is also slightly thicker, slightly heavier.
And the ports are in slightly different positions as well. A funny design on the Pro X is the Surface Connect port's really high up because it's so thin. On the Pro 8, it's still a little bit further down because it's thick enough for them to be able to fit that in there.
Yeah. So, but they look incredibly similar. And in fact, the keyboard is the exact same as the Pro X. They're interchangeable. You can just buy the Pro X keyboard. So if you go buy this device and you already have a Pro X, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Just slap the new keyboard on there. They hit the pen and, the tray. It's the same thing. You can use the new Surface Slim Pen 2 with this, including the haptics. This is an important distinction. Surface Slim Pen 2 basically works, I think, with all older devices in terms of inking. You don't get the haptics, though. You need only the Surface Pro 8 or Studio laptop to get haptics. You don't even get the haptics on Duo as well. So that's the trade-off there. What else? thinner bezels. We expected this, and I said months ago, you're gonna get thinner bezels and maybe like a display closer to 13-inch, and that's exactly what it is. It's a 13-inch display. Going from 12.3 to 13 doesn't sound like a lot. I'm telling you, it makes a big difference in usability. This is just easier to read. You have much more screen real estate. It looks better. You get the same 60/120 hertz display. That is, it's default 60. You can set it to 120. We expect an update later to enable dynamic refresh on it. On the rear camera, it is now 10 megapixel, which is interesting, and can shoot 4K video, which is not something I think a lot of people asked for, but we'll take it. Front-facing camera is basically the same, but now it does a thing called face lock. That is when you're on a conference call, it knows there's a human. This is the Intel stuff, by the way, I think. It locks onto your face. It knows that's a human face. So if you move around, it's going to follow your face and keep it in focus. Or if you, say, take a drink of coffee and you move your coffee, it's not going to refocus on your coffee and blur. It's going to keep your face in focus the whole time, which you've seen Zach and I struggle with that sometimes on this podcast, even using a Brio, right, where the focus goes off. So it's a small thing, but it matters. You get Dolby Vision support as well. So again, for more color accuracy, better for movies, and Dolby Atmos support, which we saw on the Surface Pro 7 Plus. That was a small change. Dolby Atmos is actually very good. It's basically better spatial audio, and it really does make a difference. Very good battery life. The highest battery life yet for Surface Pro. And the chassis is more tapered. This is kind of hard to describe. It feels smoother, more rounded on the back, and the edges taper down. It feels better.
Do you know if they've moved from magnesium to aluminium or aluminum? I can't even say the American version.
I don't know. I didn't get to ask that question. I'll try to find out. I think it's different. They were kind of making a big deal about the black version because it looks different than the previous. Because put it this way, the last Surface Pro 7 in black was like a layer that was put on, right?
And it did a much better job. It did a much better job at fighting off fingerprints compared to the Pro X, which just stuck onto it.
Yeah, this isn't like the Pro X, I don't think. But I don't know, it could be. It doesn't look like the Pro X, and it has more of a shimmer to it, I think. But I feel like this is like all black. I don't think there's a layer that they put onto it, but I'll try to find that out. You got two Thunderbolt 4 ports finally. Type C, no Type A anymore, right? And a removable SSD. So that's kind of a big deal. 4G, no 5G. That's a bummer. I forgot to put that in my hands-on. That was kind of a letdown, but whatever. I feel like that's Microsoft always does typical things, right? So like, there's no 5G, which I think in 2 years 5G is going to be a big deal, especially if you have this device still. And of course, no anti-reflective display, which again is just super frustrating.
Did you mention that the LTE can now be had in the i7 models?
Yeah, the LTE, yeah. The LTE is i7, i5, or i3, whatever you want.
Which is nice, because previously it was only in the i5 models on the Pro line. Good. It's good that you can now actually configure it with an i7, because I know a lot of people are asking for that.
Yeah. They, of course, reworked the thermals, So now you're going to get an i5 with a fan or an i3 with a fan. But my hunch is that fan's going to be very quiet. Even on Surface Pro 7 Plus, that fan is... I barely noticed it at all. So I don't think it's going to be an issue. But that will be a distinction between Pro X. I think, again, this is a slam dunk. The Pro is one of their best-selling devices. This just seals the deal. Larger screen, high refresh rate, improved display, improved cameras, improved audio, thinner or redesigned chassis, Thunderbolt 4. You can connect it up to an eGPU, of course, now. You get that pen that's hidden in there. And I can't stress enough how good Surface Slim Pen 2 is with the haptic stuff. It just totally changes my wanting to use this pen, because it truly feels like you're writing on texture now. It's so bizarre. But that's when you guys start using haptics, that's the beauty of it. If you ever use like Apple's Force Touch, even on the old iPhones, like it's just weird how it tricks your mind into thinking it's doing something. And it's the same thing here. When you're using this pen, it truly feels like you're writing like a pencil on paper, like a scratchiness to it. It's just bizarre. But that pen also does cool things. So say you're doing a resizing, like say you select an object in Photoshop or whatever, and you get that like it circles it, and then there are little touch points where you can grab that and then pull it out with the pen. As your pen approaches those little points, when it gets close, it gives a little haptic feedback to let you know. And as soon as you feel that, you can just grab and pull and resize or do whatever you want. And so a bunch of the tools do this. And it just allows you to work quicker. It just feels so much more natural. Again, this goes under ineffable. It's until you experience it in person, it's hard to explain, but it makes a huge difference. This pen should also have zero latency, they're calling it, and zero pressure force, meaning you barely have to touch the screen before you can start shading. So all those things were improved too. So it's I think it's gonna be a big deal.
Do you know if they improved the jitterbug that previous Surface pens and devices? I wonder if they have, because as you know, I think we've mentioned this before. So. The Surface pen technology really didn't get upgraded much after 2017. That was the last time they really put effort into the Surface pen technology. And then, of course, they did the Slim Pen in 2019, but the technology didn't really change, just the form factor. This year, it does appear that they've actually added a lot more changes to the technology itself, because the zero force inking thing should improve response time and stuff. Obviously, the haptics are a big deal. So have they fixed the jitterbug? Perhaps, but maybe only on the newer models, because I'm not sure if that issue was with the Surface Pen specifically, or with just with the digitizer on the older devices.
So this is the digitizer. This is the G6 version. Versus G5 and the older, and that goes for Duo as well.
What was that?
So my Moto phone just rang, which is interesting because it doesn't have a SIM. I don't know what that was. Anyways, so my hunch is, one, they probably did fix that, which is one of the reasons why it has a G6 processor digitizer in there. Like, why else would they not address that? But yeah, you're right. I think that would only affect the new Surface Pro 8, new Surface Laptop Studio, and the Surface Pen 2, Slim Pen 2. That's something we'll try to clarify on.
Yeah. So I think that's everything to do with the Pro 8. Those are the big announcements of the event. There are a couple more things we will briefly talk about here, starting with the Surface Pro X. There was some updates to the Surface Pro X, but they were very minor. This is not a new Surface Pro X.
Called this one.
Yeah, we did.
This is the 50-50.
Yeah.
It was a 50-50. It's either going to be a major revamp or they're just going to do Wi-Fi only.
And it was Wi-Fi only. So SQ1, SQ2 can now be had with Wi-Fi only models, which means the entry-level price for the Surface Pro X is now $100 cheaper, starting at $899. Oh, real quick, before we move on from the Pro 8, pricing and availability. So the Pro 8 is actually more expensive than any of the previous sort of mainline Pros before it. I'm going to give you one.
More, right?
Sorry, say again.
I think it's $100 more. It was $1,099 instead of $999.
I thought the mainline Pro always started at $749. Am I wrong? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Point is, it's quite a bit more. Yeah, I thought it was quite a bit more expensive than it was before. If you see here, so $1099 for the i5 with 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs storage. That said, the cheaper one that I just mentioned on these older models is usually with an i3 with 4 gigs of RAM. So it appears they've sort of just omitted that from this lineup. Either way, it's still quite a bit more expensive. And also, it'll be available October 5th. Pre-orders available now, and it will be shipping in the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Austria, Germany, Ireland, Switzerland, France, and Japan. Anyway, yeah, so the Pro X is now $100 cheaper at $899, which is kind of why I think they've done this to the mainline Pro. The Pro X is now the entry-level Pro, and the main Pro is the sort of more expensive one. Of course, both of them can be configured with much more expensive SKUs, but if you're looking at specific entry-level models, the Surface Pro X is now the more affordable one by, a couple $100 at minimum. So that's a big deal, I think, especially if you have, say, student discount. The Pro X will now be even cheaper than that. It'll be in the $700, so it's a high $700. So big deal, I think there. But that's the only change. Wi-Fi only models. That said, they've also added Platinum to the SQ1 models with Wi-Fi. So the Platinum was only available on SQ2 before, but now they've actually put that on the SQ1 models as well. No SQ3, no 5G, everything else is pretty much identical. Then you have the Surface Go 3, which are very basically the same, really. They have updated the chip inside this, though. It's now, as we mentioned, the leaks are right, an Intel Pentium Gold 6500Y in the entry-level model, or an Intel Core i3 10100Y in the sort of higher tier model with LTE. Though, that said, you can now finally get LTE in the Pentium Gold model on the entry-level SKU. So you can now actually get access to a device with LTE for $499, which is, I think, pretty affordable for a device with LTE. Of course, it's not as affordable as the Surface, the Samsung Galaxy Book Go. Does the Book Go have LTE, though?
The Galaxy Book Go is $350, no LTE, but then it goes for $799, I believe it is, with 5G.
Okay, so yeah, quite a big jump in price. So I stand my ground. The Go 3 at $499 is the most affordable LTE device that I think I've come across. Could be wrong on that, but I think sounds right.
I think you might have something there.
Maybe,
they've had a couple billions, but yeah, that's really interesting. So, I criticize, laptop studio there doesn't have LTE, but that was kind of a tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
I realize it's still kind of a niche thing. But kudos to Microsoft for expanding LTE availability, because as we just talked with Pro 8, you can get it in all the models now you want, or at least different processor levels. And now apparently you can do that with Go too. And that's progress for me. That's what I want to hear. So, because as we mentioned, that Pentium chip, the Pentium Gold, should actually be a pretty significant jump. That's like a 60% performance improvement over the Surface Go 2 Pentium. So that should actually be a really good model at a great price point. The Core i3 model is only like a 10 to 15% improvement, so it won't be as massive, but any little bit helps here. They had the Surface Go 3 kind of in a corner a little bit, and obviously all that's new with it is the 10th gen CPU. And we mentioned 10th gen, but it's not 2 years old. These chips came out early 2021, so they are newer chips. Just Intel doesn't upgrade those chips as frequently as, say, the Core line. How is it? I don't know. I'm interested in trying it out and seeing. Those devices have always been a little slow for me. They didn't change. It's still eMMC for the storage. We'll have to see if the read and write times are quicker, though, because a bunch of stuff could have changed with the bus and the way it handles data. But we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, not a lot of news there. Pro X, as you mentioned, Wi-Fi only. That's kind of a bummer, as we expected. Microsoft was going to whiff on that. But there was that question because Qualcomm hasn't announced a HCX Gen 3 yet. So it would have been weird for Microsoft to come out of the gate with like their new processor based on something that hasn't been announced. But who knew, right? And there could have always been a surprise. That said, we are now hearing December, which makes sense. Qualcomm will announce the HCX Gen 3, which means we might not see production of it in devices till, first or even maybe second half of 2022. That puts, I don't know. Do you think we'll see it? Do you think we'll see a Surface Pro X refresh in the spring?
I don't know. I think
Because
it's possible.
Typically hold a couple devices for the spring to have something to talk about.
Do. Yeah, and well, like I said, if they announce the Gen 3 in December, I think it lines up. I'm sure they would have loved to announce an actual new Surface Pro X now, but because of the chip thing, they couldn't. So yeah, I think spring does make sense. I'll try and get that clarified because I have heard. Yeah, I have heard some stuff about the schedule next year, but I'll try and get that clarified for the Pro X because that will be a big deal. And it makes sense, right? Because that's basically what they did with the Surface Pro 7 Plus, right? It was, although it did have a new chip, it was still essentially a Surface Pro 7. Right. And they were very like, don't buy it, essentially. Yeah, right. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so, I know some people are like, wait, is Pro X discontinued? Absolutely not. No, Pro X is a very top tier model for them still. It's still
the pinnacle Surface Pro design. Like the Pro 8 does sort of now match it, but it's still not as good. Like it still has vents and it's still a bit thicker. Like the Pro X still is a more beautiful device in my opinion.
Right. So Pro X will be thinner, no vents, not as heavy, and longer battery life. Yes. You're still saying that it's going to get the most battery life. We'll see where that changes with the HCX Gen 3. And we'll see. That then maybe bodes well for Surface Pro X being 5G as well.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd be kind of shocked at this point if they didn't, because they didn't do 5G this time. The next refresh, maybe in spring, is also 5G, which will then again beat the Surface Pro. Surface Pro gets a stronger processor and Thunderbolt 4. And that's kind of it. So,
And yeah, 120 hertz right now, at least. The Pro X doesn't have 120
yeah, I'll be
hertz.
curious to see if, yeah, we don't know if the Pro X with the SQ3 would be able to push a
It should do.
higher.
I mean, the phone chips can, so I don't see why the
Sure.
PC chip couldn't.
But we'll see because of the battery thing. Yeah, it could go either way.
Yeah.
This is Microsoft.
It's true.
But no, Pro X is definitely going to get, a new version or at least updated internals. It's a perfect hardware. It doesn't need to be redesigned anytime soon.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that's pretty much all the big announcements. There are a couple more sort of. You talked about the Slim Pen, right? You've sort of talked about what's new with that.
Sure.
They did announce.
These are accessibility stuff.
Yes, there was some accessibility stuff. They now have stickers essentially, but they are designed to give you tactile feedback. If you can't see, for example, if you're blind, you can feel around and things can match. So you can match the X sticker with the matching sticker, and so to put that cable into that port and stuff. Really cool stuff. They spent a good few minutes talking about it at the event. And the other thing they announced is a new Bluetooth mouse. They call it the Ocean Mouse, and the sort of big selling point of it is that it's made with recycled materials. The packaging is made with recyclable materials. The mouse itself is made with 20% recycled materials. And it's $30, and I think it ships October 5th. And pretty nice. It's that's sort of part of their initiative of becoming more sustainable as a company and building sustainable products. And I do believe they sort of intend to shift their entire portfolio to this sort of sustainable model eventually. And this new mouse is the sort of start of that. I'm showing you my mouse as if it's that one, but it's not. Yeah, so there you go. And that's basically everything. That's the fall 2021 Surface event. Dan, do you think it was comparable to the 2019 event and the 2015 event?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think
those
so too.
those are the other two really big milestone events. Yeah, this was really nice. I mean, it was funny because Surface Pro 8, as I said, just basically gave people what they wanted. Finally, it's a big deal that these things have Thunderbolt 4. I think that changes a lot because Surface Pro 8 now with an eGPU just opens up the gate for a lot of fun stuff. So we'll have to wait and see how that is. I think it's going to be good. Surface Duo 2, as I said, that is the toughest challenge to try to win people over. It's going to be super interesting to see how reviews are this time around for it. And then the Laptop Studio, I think, is an important innovation in laptops, showing you what a laptop can be like. We're tired of, you and I had this discussion, like if they just did a 360 hinge, it'd be like weird. It's like we've had 360 hinges for a long time now. And it's fine. Converting to a big, thick tablet is okay, I suppose. But this is just a much better, more fluid design that fits in with their idea of like inking and drawing and sketching and all this kind of stuff. Jez Corden, our games editor, is big into drawing. He's now super intrigued by this device. Also, with the improved horsepower, this is going to be much more powerful than Surface Book. I think this is just going to be a winner. And the Surface Go 3 is interesting. It already sells very well. There's nothing, I would have maybe thinner bezels even or something like that, but it's basically fine. And
no, what it needs, Dan, is ARM. That's what it needs.
It definitely does need ARM, but not this generation of ARM.
Right,
the 7C Gen 2 is just not there yet. 7C Gen 3, I think, will be the one to watch for those kind of budget laptops. Also, quickly, let's mention HP announced a bunch of stuff. I don't want to forget HP. They had an event, a virtual event basically the day before. They announced quite a few things. One is the HP NV34, which is in my garage right now, just showed up. This is their flagship all-in-one. So I reviewed their NV32 all-in-one, I believe it was late 2019, and that was super powerful. This thing is even crazier. So this is a 34-inch, 21:9, 5K display that runs a 65-watt Intel Core processor up to a Core i9. You can get up to RTX 3080 laptop graphics in it. It can take up to 128 gigabytes of RAM and up to 2 terabytes of storage. That RAM and storage are user accessible. There's a panel on the back that's toolless. You just pop it off and there you go. You drop in your, so you can actually buy the cheaper model, add in more RAM. It's got 4 DIMM slots. what else does this thing has? It has a 16 megapixel web camera with Windows Hello, and it's magnetic. So this thing just has no wires. You just lift it off, and it has 8 contact points on the display, 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom, 1 on each side. So you can move this thing around. Plus, I imagine it does. It tilts too. So you can give yourself all sorts of creative angles. You can also put it on, of course, on the top, tilt it down. It can then scan your desktop. So you can put a drawing there or some plans or writing. This thing can scan it in and share it on like a live call. And of course, it reverses it. So it's proper, people can view it. It's not upside down. So you can be on a call with people and do a live drawing or something like that and do that live just with this camera in 16 megapixel. The NV32 had a 5 megapixel camera. So waiting to see how good this thing is. I'll be trying it. The stand has Qi wireless built in for your phone. There's 6 Type A ports, I believe, and 4 Type C with 2 Thunderbolt 4. And they put a bunch of the ports into the neck of the stand, including an SD card reader. So you don't need to reach behind the device. You just stick it into the side of the stand, which is so convenient. This thing, it starts at $2,000. That's for the Core i7 model and a 1650 Ti, I believe, GPU. It just looks, it's just a bonkers all-in-one device that really does it all. So I'm going to be doing a hands-on with that very soon. I can't benchmark it. I'll benchmark it internally for myself. But come on, Core i9 and a 3080. This thing is going to rock. They also announced the HP Spectre X360 16. So I loved the 14-inch version. That's one of my favorite laptops that they've released so far. They just made the same laptop with a 16-inch display. No dedicated graphics on this, just Intel Iris Xe. So it's literally just a bigger version of it. But it's all right because they kept the weight down. It's kind of thin and still a 360 device. They also announced the HP 11-inch tablet PC. That's its name. It's very generic, but at least you know what it is. But this is a competitor sort of with Surface Go. It runs a Pentium Silver processor, which is interesting. Starts at $499 or $599 with the keyboard, but you're getting a higher resolution display. This is a 2K display on this thing, but it also has a 13 megapixel camera on the rear that then flips around to become your front-facing camera, and it can then tilt. So when it's flipped onto the back, it's like in the chassis, and it's just like it looks like a rear camera, and you can use it for that. But then you flip it, and now you have a 13 megapixel front-facing camera. The other weird thing is this thing mounts vertically, so the keyboard attaches just like a Surface Go's keyboard, and including it does the magnetic ramp-up thing where it attaches at the bottom. So you can attach it like that, but then you can also attach it vertically. So it actually has pin connectors on the side, which is so strange, which is also why it only has one Type-C connector. But you can mount this so it's a vertical tablet, and that's because Windows 11 now does split screen vertically. So you can have 2 apps vertically, 13 megapixel camera on top with a taller, so now it's taller if you think about it. The problem with like using like a Surface Go with web camera, it's going to kind of look up at you. This can now be more level-headed, and you can even tilt it down or up. Plus, it too can tilt down and scan your desktop for collaborative sharing. You can definitely use this device on its own, but they're kind of angling it as a companion device for something like the NV34. So now the NV34 is not a touchscreen, but this thing is. And they have a thing called HP Duet, which basically mirrors. It's sort of like the sidecar that Apple uses. So you can basically mirror the device. So you can use this as a touchscreen for your bigger device, which is pretty rad. I think it's a really cool looking device. I'm curious, and it has like a fabric on the back of it too, so it's not like all metal. And then finally, HP 14-inch laptop PC. That's its name. Again, we're not so generic. This is an ARM device. This is basically the Galaxy Book Go, 14-inch, 7C Gen 2, but this has a touchscreen, where that one did not. That's all we can tell you about right now. I don't have pricing for that. It should be available. The tablet is available in December. the NV34 in October, all shipping with Windows 11. And I think also the 14-inch laptop PC ships in October as well, will be available at Walmart. So this is going to be a very affordable, probably sub $500 device. LTE is optional on that one, so you can get LTE if you want or not. Very cool stuff though from HP. They also had a couple other pavilions and all-in-ones that they announced too that are much more affordable. That also looked great. So big week for Windows 11 hardware, as I mentioned last time. I think that wraps it up. Unless you had any final thoughts on any of that stuff.
No, I think that's pretty much everything. Was the event itself, again, it was like the Windows 11 event. They were on this sort of virtual stage. There was this sort of moment where panels...
Spacey music.
Yeah, I hate that as well. I'm really not a fan of the virtual stage and the idea of this whole be calmer. It's just what they're trying to
like a spa. You're in a spa.
It makes people want to go sleep, which it shouldn't. These should be engaging, like the Apple events. Anyway, there was this moment in this event though where Pan was just like, I just want to show you the studio, the laptop studio, and he's like, come off stage. He goes behind the scenes, and it's supposed to be this spontaneous moment. It felt totally staged, the whole thing. I was like, guys, come on. I can't wait for them to go back to live events. I think they're better. I hope next year is the year we all return to normalcy in that regard, because these pre-recorded events, the Apple ones are fun. They are the funnest, I think, but all the other companies just do a bad job at it, in my opinion. And I prefer that when it's live and on stage and more honest, if you will. Sure.
Definitely good feedback on there. All right, we're going to now turn it towards the audience, do Q&A. We're not going to save this for the recorded portion, are we?
No, not the Q&A. No, we should also mention that we're not going to be doing an episode on Friday, because this episode you're listening to now is this week's episode. So we'll be back next Friday for the usual episode. But yes.
That'll be Friday, October 1st for those listening. Yeah, so we'll do Q&A with the live audience now. Sorry you don't get to hear that portion, but that's okay. We'll be doing a lot more coverage on Windows Central. We expect full reviews for all these devices. As you said, most of them come out October 5th. Typically, Microsoft hasn't given us, a heads up on when those devices are coming. Typically, they get us those for that, launch date or around there. So stay tuned for that. We will be getting them as well as Duo 2, and we'll have a lot more coverage on Windows Central. Join our WindowsCentral.com Discord server too, where the community is there discussing all this stuff, and we'll pop in as well to answer some questions there. You go to windowscentral.com/Discord to learn how to join that. Follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, Rubino, and Zach at ZACBOWDEN. And you can ask us questions there. We'll keep up with the news and what we learn as we go forward. Of course, go to windowscentral.com, where we have all the info on these devices going up as we speak. As always, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone.
Nice. So, yes, we'll be hanging around for 10 or so minutes to answer any questions in the chat. I already see some. Which color or configuration will you both get or prefer on the Duo 2? I'm getting the Obsidian 128 because I have a 256 gig Duo 1 and I have used exactly 30 gigabytes of it. So,
I'm on the same path with that. I buy the lowest RAM or storage devices out there because I have a lot of cloud. I don't download a lot of music for offline, and what I do is just a couple of gigs here and there. So I'm okay with the 128 gigs. The color, the joke is, of course, I would be sent a review unit, and I don't really get a choice usually for review units, although I can maybe ask. Sometimes I do. I don't know. I mean, this is what I'll tell you. My hunch is Microsoft will sell me the black version because it's the new version. That's usually what they do.
What do you want?
And I don't know. They both looked really nice to me. The white hides fingerprints better, but I plan on using that snap-on cover with the pen, which basically kind of solves that. The black looked really nice too. The black hides the camera bump much better.
Yeah.
It really can't see it at all. It just disappears. So I'm fine with either one of them. I think it's going to look okay.
Are we sure the Duo 2 is not coming with a bumper? It came with the Duo 1, but was never listed when ordering. No, it was listed. The Duo 1...
the box.
Yeah, it says there's an in the box section, and it does mention the bumper. The Duo 2 does not come with a bumper. And also, I just checked, the bumpers on Duo 2 aren't silicone. They are polycarbonate. So they shouldn't be gross.
Oh, yeah, good.
Yeah.
I should have found that. Good point there. Is Duo 2 going to be available on AT&T? So, my hunch is yes. I think usually AT&T, I'll be surprised if they haven't announced it already or something. They probably will do a separate press release closer to availability because AT&T has always been its long-term partner. So I don't know. I didn't get to ask that. But I bet that info will be coming out a little bit later. Where did you get to see the devices in person? It was the New York City flagship store, correct? Zach Dan, I just want to say thanks for your audience engagement. I know it takes a lot of time. Sometimes leaving the YouTube comments, it's really appreciated. Thank you. Glad you appreciate that. Yeah, it's one thing I've always prided myself on since doing this job since day one, which is I talk to you guys. Yeah, I do it because I think it's respectful. You guys have questions. I should be able to answer them if I can, if I'm capable. Two, I often learn a lot from you guys. Some of you are experts in displays or engineering or know more about even processors than I do. And so and if I see you guys asking the same questions over and over and over again, I know I'm not doing a good job of explaining something then. And so I need to go back to the website and get an article up. So I love talking to the audience here, and you guys are, our lifeblood. Well, I should mention, here's a funny story, Zach, you'll love. Someone at the Microsoft store, he's like, oh, Windows Central, the only site worth reading.
That is nice to hear.
Like, yeah, cold-blooded, but true.
Yeah, it is true. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. Will all apps be able to open up in span mode like how they explained for Outlook? Yes, that's an Android 11 feature, which will also be coming to the Duo 1, I'm told. That's not official info. That's just from my sources. That's just a software feature. So what you can do is you go into settings. There's an option called automatically spans apps. You go in there, then it just lists all of your apps in the device, and you can flick on or off whichever apps you want to open across both screens automatically.
And can you please give us more info when you can about the Snap-on pen cover? Do we know pricing of that yet?
I can't find any product information on it at all. There's no pricing. There's no availability. It's not on the Microsoft Store. I hope it's not coming later, because that'd be annoying.
So all I can tell you is it's a hard cover. It's a hard plastic. It has a texture to it. It snaps on. It's only needed to wirelessly recharge the pen as well as protect the device. It's, surrounds the sides as well as the top, and it feels really protective, and it makes the device just feel even more substantial. You don't need it to stick the pen to the device. The magnets are actually within the Surface Duo itself. I highly recommend it. I'm going to get one and slap it on as soon as I can. I think it looks really cool, but we'll see, right? That'll be kind of the test. What is the brightness of Surface Pro 8 screen? Is it brighter than previous? I didn't ask if it's brighter. It's a good question. Save it for the review, unless I find out sooner. I do have a colorimeter that measures nits and brightness, and something I've always compared on the Surface devices from previous reviews. So I have the numbers from previous Surface devices, and we'll be able to make that direct comparison and answer that in the review.
Lots of people asking about Surface Neo. We have no updates on Surface Neo. Microsoft didn't announce it. It was coming today. It's still, as far as we know, on the back burner. So no updates. Don't expect it anytime soon.
Someone's asking about the Duo speakers. Do they sound better than Duo 1? I can't tell you. It was a little noisy there. I didn't get a really chance to try them out. I can tell you there are stereo speakers now, and they seem better in terms of like focusing on that. I assume 2 is better than 1, so you should get more output and more volume. But we'll have to wait for the review to see how that actually translates.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry. Will Duo 2 be available on Verizon? Don't know. It'll work on Verizon. I wouldn't be surprised if Verizon sells it in their back channels that they do for like business and stuff like that. They may have it, but I have no knowledge there. Go ahead, Zach.
Are you sure LTE is coming to the Surface Pro 8? Can't find any info. Yes, I should have clarified and I forgot to in the podcast. The LTE models are coming later. They won't be there at launch. I believe they're coming in December, but it will eventually have LTE configurations.
Womp, womp, womp. Yeah, that's a disappointment there.
The LTE always comes later for some reason.
Yeah, it's so frustrating on that. Apple doesn't do that.
No, yeah.
Yeah, because that's because I was hoping they would send me the LTE model. Are the Verge's videos on Surface devices the same flagship store? I didn't watch those videos, so I assume so. That's that store has I want to say 5 levels to it, including some public and some that are held for like private events and uh, hands-on and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot to it besides like what you see. Like if you walk past it on Fifth, I think it's Fifth Ave, it looks just like a Microsoft store. But then you can go upstairs into like another windowed room, and then they have like other rooms that don't have windows and stuff like that where they do experiences and stuff like that. So yeah, it had to have been there. So.
Due to the inevitable comparison with MacBook Pros, are there any high hopes for the speakers on the Laptop Studio? Did you get to try the speakers?
Didn't get to try them. Like I said, though, they're quad speakers with Dolby Atmos support. They should be very good.
Are they under the keyboard still?
I think so, yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely didn't see any grills anywhere. I don't know where the other two are. This is something I'll find out for the review. I'll just say from my experience with laptops, basically, Microsoft has always done the best in audio. HP is getting really close, though, because they're doing some crazy stuff. But I expected audio to be very, very good on this, especially with Quad and Dolby Atmos. That should be some pretty killer speakers. And they have space for them, so. What about Surface Neo? Dead? No, not dead. We'll keep hammering this point until we hear. They're focusing right now on what you saw announced today. Single screen, sort of basic, traditional Windows PCs, because that's where the market is screaming for right now. They want clamshell laptops. They want 2-in-1 convertible laptops. They want Surface Pro devices, very good web cameras. That's where the market is just like, we need. That's expected to be strong through 2025. It's not the time right now to divert resources to focusing on a dual screen experience because they need those people to make what was Windows 11 and what was announced today. I believe once this stuff calms down a little bit, they will revisit the dual screen. They have to do the software work in Windows 11. They'll come back to the Surface Duo hardware have to update the processors. I'm confident they're going to bring that back because nothing has changed in how Panos has talked about Neo and the vision behind that device. The only thing that's happened is the pandemic came and changed the priorities for the company. So Duo 2 is listed as having eSIM and Nano SIM. Is that then dual SIM? Good question. Don't know the answer to that. No 5G support on Pro 8. Correct. Big disappointment there. I've got to put that in my little write-up. Duo 2 max nits is 800 nits. Correct. That's not the, Samsung devices go over 1,000 nits sometimes. So, but it's still pretty bright. Does Laptop Studio cover full sRGB color gamut? I assume so. I'll measure it when I do the review. They've been very good with color accuracy. Actually, yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if they've ever really hit 100%. They've come close, but it's something we'll find out. Why Laptop Studio has a lower resolution than Book 3. I kind of talked about that during the podcast. Production, pricing, they have a certain price point they want to hit. They have a certain demographic for user that they want to appease to. Power, performance, as well. They want to get specific battery life numbers. It's about finding the right balance. I'll tell you from using it and trying it myself, I can't really tell the difference. It looked fantastic. It looked like a really, really nice display. I think if you put them side by side, Surface Book, the only thing you would say is that screen is bigger than the other screen. That's the only thing you could tell me. I don't think you'd be able to be like, that one has a higher PPI. Maybe you could. I don't know. I doubt it.
I could.
What can be traded in? I don't know. We do have a thing up, or should be going up on the site about trade-ins for Duo 2. You can trade in a Surface Duo 1 for Duo 2. You can get a max of, I believe, $475 for it. Not a ton of money, but hey, it's something.
You'll be unsurprised to hear that that trade-in deal not available in the UK, only US.
You've done the trade-in stuff.
No. Well, you know what that means? It means I get to keep my Duo 1 and compare.
Sure. Will you get Jez to review the gaming on Surface Laptop Studio or Surface Duo 2? Depends if he picks up any of them. I mean, I'll definitely touch on gaming in my review. That's easy enough for me to do. If you haven't seen my previous Surface Book and everything reviews, they're huge. They're like 4,000 to 5,000 words. So I'll touch on gaming. But listen, RTX 3050 Ti, a Core i7, 35 watt. It's going to be very good for gaming. The question is not what you play, it's just how high frame rates and resolutions can you go, right? That's every gaming laptop. Hinge on Surface Book versus Laptop Studio. I felt the one on the Surface Book was a little cumbersome. Yeah, I mean, the Laptop Studio is just a completely different beast. The beauty here is you don't have to push a button, lift off the tablet, and hear a spring and all that. You just pull it forward and it clicks into the new positions. It's seamless is how I would describe it, where Book was not seamless. It was cool, but it wasn't seamless.
Is there another planned Microsoft event on the 5th of October? I don't think so. That's the launch day for Windows 11.
Yeah, I don't think there's like an online event they're going to do or anything like that. I think there will be their socials on YouTube. There'll be you'll see a media push with Windows 11.
Zach, what are those two laptops behind you? There's some HP Spectre and some Lenovo ARM device. I don't remember their names.
Oh yeah, what was it? The C930.
That's right.
Like
yeah,
that.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. Are more apps going to have two instances running on Duo? Were you able to use two edges open on Duo 2? I didn't try Edge opening on Duo.
What you're referring to, because the new Edge doesn't do the thing where you can open two instances on two screens. That's a bug, I believe. That's what I've been told, and that will likely be fixed at some point. Does the Duo 2 notification bar stay on all the time when the device is closed? No, it only comes on when you tap the power button, and then once you close it, it will be on for X amount of seconds, and it will dim and go off. And it will come on automatically, of course, when a notification comes in. Will the Surface Duo 2 come with a charger included in the box? No, it doesn't. Just like every other smartphone, it has a USB-C cable and the device itself, but there is no charging brick, at least according to the what's in the box section on the Microsoft Store website. In the UK, so in every market, apart from the US, though, you get USB-C headphones in the box. So I'm excited to see those. I've got Surface wired headphones, and you don't.
Did the Duo 2 notification bar stay on all the times when the device?
I just answered that one.
No. Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. Where can I find the Surface Duo Pen 2 pen Surface Duo 2 pen case that he talks about? We haven't found it yet. We'll get the links up on Windows Central when we find it. Any explicit reason why they don't go with 11th Gen 8 core? Yeah, I mean, there's thermals, there's battery life, there's performance. They probably could have put 8th Gen in there, but then the battery would have tanked, right? So that's the trade-off. An XPS 15 or even XPS 17, doesn't get tremendous battery life because of all that power. It's a trade-off. If you're going to be running 8 cores, the AMDs are the same way. So they want to find a balance between delivering good battery life. And I'll be frank, I think the GPU is more important anyway for a lot of these devices. I'd rather have a strong GPU and a capable processor, which this is. This is a much better processor than anything they've ever used before. It's a new kind of processor too. H35 is new for Intel. They've usually had ones that go up to 28 TDP, which is sort of what Surface Book was using. It could peak, it could burst to that, but usually it went much lower. Or they had 45 watt chips, which is like what the XPS 15 used to use. This is a 35. It's like in between those. And so it's going to give you much better performance than what was in Surface Book, but not quite as performant as, say, like a thick workstation. But I think the GPU is going to help a lot of people.
Why did Microsoft say why they removed the microSD card on Pro 8? No, they didn't, but I assume they have data which suggests nobody or very few people are using the microSD card slot.
Yeah, I always find It's nice to have. I've never used one in my entire life. First of all, I can't use an SD card slot because I shoot in CF Express,
Nice.
which is because I have like a real serious camera. So even the SD is useless for me. Until laptops ship with CF Card Express readers, I don't care, and they never will because it's so huge.
Zach, do you see the laptop studio being your PC replacement to run the podcast? I actually don't know if the chip inside it can do it. Once I get it and test it, I will be able to let you know. But I assume it can. The Book 3 couldn't because it was a 15-watt chip that would, I guess, ramp up to 29 watts or something, and it just wasn't enough. This is by default a 35-watt chip, which I'm guessing can ramp up to whatever, higher than that if it needs to. Because the Studio, what's the Studio 2? It's the 7th gen, but it's a 45-watt chip, I believe. And that's what this podcast is coming from right now, and it works just fine. So if
it's a very old 45-watt.
Yeah. So if the 35-watt chip in the Studio Book, the laptop studio, sorry, can ramp up to that, I guess, then I think it should be okay.
Duo 2 finally has improved Microsoft Launcher. Yeah, we talked about that during the Surface Duo 2 segments. Basically, the feed section looks more like a Windows 11 widgets. Redesign looks better. The notification panel is wider. Redesigned, looks similar to Android 12, has dedicated sliders for volume and brightness. Oh, and there's also little things too, like when you swipe up for the app tray, before it was like a flick. You kind of like brought it and it just flicked up and that was the only option. Now it can drag and it follows your finger just like on Windows 11 does when you're swiping something out. So it's like a one-to-one experience. So it feels much more natural. So there's stuff like that. They redid the settings. If you go through my article with the hands-on, you go through the gallery, you'll see the new settings. So there's a lot of reworking that they did to Launcher. I don't know everything. Like I don't know if there's accent colors and other options that I wasn't able to find out due to time. So I'll make sure to address that in the review though, because but it's basically been updated and refreshed. And they said it's more optimized for Duo and stuff. So. Did you get to test the Duo 2 cameras, and were you satisfied by the app opening and shutter response? Yeah, I mean, it's going to get a lot of benefits from the Snapdragon 888, which delivers its own onboard processing for images that greatly enhances things. I did get to try it. It was very quick. They were very proud of this camera, and it looked great to me. Yeah, it took pictures quickly and all that kind of stuff. Again, we have to wait for the review, but they're very proud of the camera. They were showing it off. They were bragging about it. I don't think I'm not saying it's better than an S21 or the iPhone. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's going to start approaching probably last year's high-end flagship devices, which is fine. I'm running $500 and $600 Android phones right now that have cameras kind of blow me away and what they can do. So I'm excited about this.
Zach, can we start the rumor mill of what else you know that we didn't see yet in regards to hardware? No, I'm not going to talk about that sort of stuff today. The next Surface Duo is in the works. I already know a bit about that one. And there's also a very cheap laptop in the works as well, which I plan to detail probably in the next few weeks. But yes, there's more stuff coming. Of course, there is. They've got the whole thing, the whole of next year, I think, is planned out for them. I'm doing my best to find out what all of that stuff is, but it takes time. But when I have some stuff to share, I will certainly share it.
Got to mention the new Your Phone app. Correct. Yes, that's a good point. They didn't really talk about, but they showed it off in the video. You can pause and see. It's a new redesign for Your Phone that works with Surface Duo apparently with the apps, but we'll have to wait and see what that actually looks like. But they redesigned where the notifications are and they changed the layout a bit, but no other details on that just yet. But that'll be fun to watch. Did I fold it backwards? Yes. Again, if you go back to the podcast at the beginning, I talk about this extensively. It folds back. It actually makes a beautiful clapping noise kind of when you close it like it's meant to. The glass door or the cover doesn't make contact with the lenses themselves. There's a separation there. It's very sturdy. It felt great to hold. Yeah, I couldn't even really notice it, to be honest. I'll have to wait. It was only a few minutes. They got to use it, so we'll have to wait for the review, but it seemed totally fine. They're very confident that structurally the integrity will hold up. And that was even once you put on, I tried it naked, and then I also the phone naked, not me naked. And I also tried it with the I also tried it with the cover on and the pen on, which is a thick boy. If you go through my gallery again in my hands-on post, you'll see it's thick. It's even thicker when you close it, but it was totally fine. Like it just, I don't know. It's hard to explain. I don't think it's going to be an issue at all. Can we expect a price reduction on the Surface Duo 2? I mean, maybe, probably. Who knows? They always do sales.
I don't think we'll see as dramatic of a price reduction this time.
Right.
I think they've been a lot more sensible with their stock, the amount they've ordered. Because the Duo 2, the 128 gig and the 512 gig black model was already sold out in the Microsoft Store US. So I assume they only made 10. So I don't think you're going to see as big of a discount with this one. So don't be holding out for one, because if it happens, then great. But I don't think, based on some stuff I've heard, I think it would be against. It wouldn't be in their favor to slash it by 50% like they did with the Duo 1.
They show that the app mirroring working even when the phone was shut closed. Is that possible to mirror apps on your phone when the phone screen is off? Yes, it's how the Z Flip works too. It's doable. There's still occasionally like you have to accept a notification on your phone to enable it all. It's a little bit annoying. I think that would even be solved though with this, since they get to control a little bit more. But yeah, you should be able to leave it folded closed in your pocket and just use the apps. Correct.
Did they mention at all why there isn't any water resistance? Did they, Dan?
No, I didn't ask that. It's a good question. I just assume engineering and technically speaking, it's very hard.
It's because they're lazy.
It took Samsung 3 versions to get there, right? So, but maybe next version.
For those of you who like codenames, I do believe the Surface Laptop Studio was codenamed Zeus, and the Surface Slim Pen 2 was codenamed Naboo. I'm trying to find the ones for the Pro 8 because I knew those ones for ages. I haven't been able to find the Pro 8 one, which is probably why I knew the least about it, because I didn't know what to ask for. I was like, what is it called?
So the Pro 8 doesn't have Wake on Touch. I don't know. It's one thing I forgot to look at or ask. I think if it's not there now, that may come later, just like the dynamic refresh. But something, again, as we get the reviews and stuff like that, I'll try to inquire about.
Is Surface Book never going to come back? Well, they said that the Laptop Studio is a replacement for the Surface Book line. So I don't think that form factor of a sort of physical hard keyboard with a detachable display, I think that's done. I think they're over it. They're not going to do another one of those. Will they reuse the Surface Book branding? Possibly. I think it's likely, given that the book branding is very strong in all markets, in all categories, in all tech products. And I think it would be a waste for them to just sort of throw that branding out the window, because the book, they could do a Surface Laptop book or something like that, or whatever.
Still need to do Surface Folio.
Yeah, they do. And Surface Phone.
Right. Yes. How do you think Surface Laptop Studio will feel in the lap, with the vents being at the bottom of the chassis, holding it in portrait mode? The portrait mode threw me off a little bit. I don't really envision using this in portrait mode. You could, though. I mean, I'm looking at a picture of it next to Surface Book and how thick it is. Yeah, you can use it. The vents will be a challenge, no doubt about it. As far as just using it in your lap, like a laptop, I think it'll be totally fine. I'm not really worried about that. In fact, I love how Microsoft does its cooling, because a lot of laptops put the intake vent on the bottom and then jet the air out either the sides or the rear. And here they're doing it on the sides. So when you're using it in your lap, you're literally never blocking any airflow, which is always the challenge with traditional laptops. If you're trying to use a laptop on your lap with a blanket in between, it can cause an issue. You shouldn't really have a problem with this device by comparison.
Right, a couple more questions, and I think it's time to head off.
Microsoft should partner with Wacom. They work with them, but don't forget, Microsoft literally bought a company called Intrig, which is the pen technology that they use. Maybe they should have bought Wacom, but they didn't. They bought Intrig, which is the competitor. So they won't do anything special with Wacom. They're going to invest in their own technology. Sorry. When are you guys meant to get the review units? No ETA. I can just tell you historically they tend to get us them at or around the release dates, or try to have the reviews embargoed for the release dates. So somewhere around the release date is all I can tell you. But I don't have a firm info on that. What was the coil shown at the beginning of the Surface Laptop Studio video? I don't remember what that was.
It was probably a coil for wirelessly charging the pen, since that's the thing it does.
Oh. Yep. When will we review Duo 2? Same answer. I don't have a date. It could be when it goes on sale. Maybe it's after. I don't think it'll be after. Maybe it's a week before. I don't know. Microsoft hasn't told us yet. So, any photos of the clip-on cover for Duo 2? Yes. Go to windowscentral.com. Go to my hands-on posts. It's called Hands-on Impressions of Surface Duo 2, Surface Laptop Studio. You can go through. I have like 20 photos in the photo gallery, and you can go through and see a bunch of them there, both white and black. Xbox Wireless and Surface Studio laptop. Yeah, I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't know about that one. It would be weird if they didn't do that.
Yeah, it has the most powerful GPU they've ever put in a Surface.
I mean, it did in Surface Book 3,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Why not? Yeah, it's a good question. I'll try to remember to ask that.
So there's not much to complain about anymore in regards to Surface devices, right? Other than anti-reflective screens. Yeah, I think they're almost perfect.
Yeah.
They've got Thunderbolt now, the screen. I still want a higher resolution on the laptop studio.
Wow.
That's my new complaint.
Thanks to Jitendra Shrimal. I hope I'm pronouncing that right for the, I think that's a big donation to the channel. Is that what that is? Super chat?
Yes. I don't know if it's a big donation because that's a currency that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, right.
Is it yen?
Anyways, it doesn't matter. Thank you. It's much appreciated. When you expect Surface
100
Pro
rupees.
8, okay. When you expect Surface Pro 8 LTE to be announced? Well, it was announced, but it's not shipping till December. Xbox Wireless is listed in the tech specs on Microsoft's site for Surface Laptop Studio. So there you go. Good. Thank you for following that, Dondi. So yeah, that would make sense. They would continue that. So makes gaming even better on that device.
How does the cheapest?
How does
the cheapest Pro compare to the old i3 Surface Pro? I think they're comparable, right?
Yeah. It's pretty close. There'll be exceptions, depending on what you're running for games or something like that. But yeah, it's probably pretty close. I would opt for the Pro X for the design at that point.
I'm a bit sad they've moved away from Alcantara. I think the type covers are still Alcantara.
Yeah. But you're right. It would have been weird. It would have been awesome, but it would have been weird also if they'd done Alcantara on the Surface Laptop Studio.
Well, they never did on the book, and I think maybe the book team just doesn't like it, and I kind of agree with them.
Wrong! I wouldn't have said no to it, but
I really wanted, when I first started hearing about Andromeda, the dual screen phone that they now release, one of the things I heard that they were considering originally was Alcantara on the outside, because it was supposed to be this notebook, and it was supposed to feel like a notebook. I want that. I still want this to be Alcantara on the outside. That'd be so cool.
I don't disagree. It'd probably get dirty, but
yeah, well, who cares?
Where to find trade-up info for Surface devices? If you go to Windows Central, we have it's in the first column right now. You can almost get $500. It's called. That should probably take you down the rabbit hole. But it's dependent upon market. too. As Zach says, like, I don't think you can do it in the UK, but you can do it in the US. The keyboard is no longer Alcantara. So we're talking about Surface Laptop Studio. It's more like Surface Laptop 15-inch, where it's just metal, and Surface Book, where it's just metal. I think Alcantara for like Surface Laptop 13-inch, I think they'll probably keep a model around.
I think what they're doing is the devices aimed at power users, which the Book and the 15-inch devices usually are. Those don't have Alcantara. The ones that are aimed at more general consumers, just sort of average users, do have Alcantara options, and I think we'll probably keep seeing that.
Got it. I'm confused about the reintroduction of thermal fan to Surface Pro 8. Yeah, so as I mentioned, i3, i5, and i7 all have fans in them now, or fan, I should say, a fan. And in doing so, they redesigned it so that they could put LTE in all those models too, instead of popping the fan out. In terms of why it's there, obviously, whenever you pull the fan out, you have to make compromises somehow with the thermals. So I imagine with the fans, these chips can probably push harder for longer durations than they could without the fan, right? It makes sense. It keeps the device cooler. So maybe they were just going for straight ahead performance and just decided to do that. That said, like on the 7 Plus i7 with a fan, I really don't ever hear it. Like I hear it when I'm doing like a Windows update, but they're very quiet. Like they don't constantly run. So I think it'll be fine. My Duo trade-in price is $60. Womp womp womp.
It's more than what I get for trading it in.
Are you guys going to upload a hands-on video? Unfortunately not. Did not have time, resources, or people there to make that happen. Does the screen hinge, is it a bit resistant to touch and pen on Laptop Studio between various positions? No, it's like the Elite Folio. It's either laptop or it's in that kind of tent mode position, or it's flat. There's no like in between those. It'll just kind of flop around otherwise. And that brings us back to the patent. The patent we saw over the summer is not what this is. That patent is a little bit more advanced and does do that, which tells me we'll probably see that, but not for a few more years, because it's probably very hard to mass produce and keep cheap.
Do you know why they don't? Sorry, go
on. Do you think there'll be sales at Christmas already? I don't know if there'll be sales. Well, maybe. They've done it before. Surface Pro 7, I think, did get like $100 or $200 off. So you may see that, but you also probably see bundles, discounted type cover, discounted pen, and they'll do stuff like that.
Do you know why they don't release in all EU countries at the same time? They ship from Germany. Shouldn't matter if you're in France or Spain. I'm not too sure on the exact reason. There's probably loads of reasons. It's all about managing your stock, and also some regions have different rules. Like for example, last year I believe Germany and France, the Duo came with USB-C headphones, but the UK didn't for some reason. But this time, all of the EU countries come with USB-C headphones, except for the US. Like, there's different models, there's different variants of the hardware. There's lots of different reasons why it might take a while for them to roll out in different regions in the EU.
Someone again is asking about, does Laptop Studio replace Surface Book? Yes, it does. As far as we know, there won't be a Surface Book 4.
Is it too early to ask you about what you know about the Duo 3? Yes, it is. I know a few things, but I don't have a story yet. So it's in development, put it that way. It's coming. The next Surface Duo. I'm going to call it the next Surface Duo. I won't call it Duo 3. The next Surface Duo is coming next year, probably, hopefully.
When you do the Surface Pro 8 review, could you comment on how to replace the SSD? Sure. I'll just say, if you go look at the, I did a Surface Pro X SSD guide, how to upgrade that. In fact, I'll find a link for you. It's basically the same thing. There's going to be no difference. It's super easy. It just requires the a SIM tool. You pop it out, but I explained it all, including the type of SSD you want. The hardest thing is not even replacing the SSD. It's sort of like, how do you get Windows onto it? Anyway.
Dan, are you going to send Zach a Duo 2, or will he be able to buy it in the UK? I can buy it on my own this time. Yay! Although I might get him to buy me a laptop studio.
Oh no, I like the Surface Book form factor so much better. Well, you were a minority.
Wow.
Not enough of you bought it. Sorry. New Surface dock, not to our knowledge. How did Laptop Studio feel in the hand? Was it mobile enough? It's smaller than this. It's significantly smaller than Surface Book 15. I'll say that. I didn't get to carry it around, but it feels very solid. Like it feels cool. It's just a cool looking device. I think it's really awesome looking. But I'll talk more about that in a review.
All right, I think that just about does it. I need to head off. All right. Thank you all for tuning in, everybody. Like we mentioned, we'll be back next Friday for the next episode of the podcast. It will be live, of course. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated on when we go live. But until then, we will see you next time.
Bye, everyone.